Connect podcast. Super excited to have you guys today. This is becoming now a routine, right? We bring you some exciting legal experts, right? And who are amazing domain experts. And when they start talking about what they do, how excited they are about what they do, what kind of clients they serve, right? It makes it I think it makes it lawyers look like less threatening, as I say, right? Someone sent us a message that what, Ali, your show makes us look like lawyers are not these people, right? Who we fear, and that's the whole point about it, right? That we bring humanize this, because law and legal issues, right, are something very close. People go through it on a daily basis, or in their personal lives or in their business life, right? So they should be aware of those things, right? And knowing the right people is very, very important. If you get in trouble, you should know the right people, and that's what matters the most. So today we have another exciting guest for you, right? We have Maya Shukairy, joining us all the way from Montreal today, right? Although she practices in Ontario. So Maya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ali. It's very nice to meet you, and thank you for inviting me on your show today.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking out taking out your time and giving a little bit of your time to our audience. So Maya, tell us a little bit, people who don't know you, tell us about yourself, about your practice, and what kind of work you do.
Yes, I'm happy to introduce myself, Ali. So, I am a criminal defense lawyer. My practice is almost exclusively focused on criminal defense. As you mentioned, I am my practice is based in the East region of Ontario. I do take cases outside of the East, but it is mainly in Ottawa and the surrounding areas. Although physically I'm right now in Montreal, but I'm traveling all the time between Quebec and Ontario. I am a sole practitioner. I am working on my own, and I've been a sole practitioner ever since I started working as a criminal defense lawyer. And I do so far a little bit of everything in criminal law. I'm not specialized in a specific area, although I am tending to get more cases in sexual assault types of cases. But I still do general criminal law practice, and I actually speak French, English, and Arabic. So I do represent clients in English and French, and I can do trials in both official languages of Canada.
That's amazing. I think being a multilingual lawyer, I think gives clients so much access. And I find that if I talk about my dad, he will always be comfortable talking in his own language with a lawyer. So as Canada is such a diverse, country we live in.
I totally agree. And it is a very important thing, especially in Canada, because, like you mentioned, it is a very diverse country and we have a lot of people from different ethnic backgrounds. And you always feel more comfortable when you're talking in your own mother tongue. And
Yeah.
especially when you're talking about a criminal case, which can be a very serious situation, very personal issue, especially in cases like sexual assault cases, domestic violence cases. You're talking about very intimate and very personal situations. You want to sometimes express yourself in your own language. So it is always better if you have a lawyer with whom you can directly communicate in that language as opposed to having an interpreter translate and being kind of in between the lawyer and the client. And I find with my Arabic clients, the fact that I'm able to communicate with them directly in Arabic definitely helps them a lot. And it adds more to that trust relationship with the client.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely builds a deeper bond and trust with them. Absolutely, a language is one of the most common ways we communicate, right? So my talking about sexual assaults and violence now, um, like for an average person, average Joe, right? There is a line blurs between human rights. Let's say if someone gets assaulted on a train or somewhere in a public area, does that come under human rights? Does that come under criminal code, right? Can you explain that a little bit, a little bit in depth, and what kind of issues come under human rights, or what kind of issues come under the criminal, area of the law?
So, I mean, an assault is a criminal offense. It is a violent criminal offense against the person, and the punishment for it is found in Section 266 of the Criminal Code. So that will definitely trigger the criminal justice system when a person is assaulted. You'll have to, for any criminal offense, whether it's assault or other than an assault, for there to be a crime, there has to be both the physical aspect, what we call in criminal terminology the actus reus. So there has to be the criminal act, and there has to be the criminal intent, the mens rea. So once you have both of these elements, the criminal act and the criminal intent, then you have a criminal offense. And of course, you'll have to prove that in a trial if you want to prove that that happened. So a criminal offense usually happens when there is, like the act and the intention that matches the act. Human rights, so I don't practice in human rights. I can't really say much about that. But it's also when, like some of the human liberties are involved, or the fundamental rights. Now, this question is interesting because in many criminal cases, there is, in a way, some kind of human aspect or human rights uh, um, aspect to it. We see that especially when we're talking about charter cases, right? Like when we're talking about the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Yeah.
But this is it's human rights, it's more fundamental rights in the person's interaction with the state. So it's when you're dealing with someone who's a state authority, like a police officer, and they, like there is a violation of your rights in terms of search and seizure. They've exceeded their power. They searched you in an unreasonable way. They seized, some elements when they weren't supposed to seize. So that triggers the Charter of Rights. And so in that sense, yes, there is a human rights aspect as opposed to the states. But one thing that's very important to understand is when we're talking about human rights here, it's usually the individual versus the state. It's not an individual versus another individual. And I say that because in the province of Quebec, there is a charter for in between individuals. That's very unique to Quebec. Maybe other provinces have that, I don't know. But I know in Quebec that there is also a charter de la personne. It's for individuals against each other, not between states and individuals. But in the criminal context, going back to criminal law, there is this charter aspect that gets involved whenever there is an interaction with a state authority and that state authority exceeds their power or acts in an unreasonable way. So then we have charter sections. And in the charter, there is usually the common sections that are involved in criminal cases are the rights that are found in section 7 to 14 of the charter. Those are the ones that we use the most in a criminal law context.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. Awesome. Like an amazing answer. I personally got clarity, and I'm sure a lot of people who are watching it, there's a little bit of an overlap, but you explained it really beautifully. So Maya, let's talk about uh, two kind of scenarios, right?
Mhm.
Let's starting with if anyone gets or charged with some sort of a criminal offense, right? So what is generally the first steps like one should be doing? Um, I someone I know, right? Uh, I interestingly getting a call because he said, Ali, lawyers, right? Um,
Yeah.
but interestingly, that person had no idea that generally what should be the first steps, right? And a lot of people don't know the process and procedure. As simple as if they get stopped by a police, right? So what are the things one should know about, an average person should know about if they get charged, right? Generally, what are the first couple of steps if you can walk us through?
So it is a very important question, and usually the answer and the advice that any lawyer would give at this very initial stage is not to say anything. What happens the moment a person is being arrested for a criminal offense is we tend to want to be, and that's human nature. I mean, I can't fault anyone for that. You become defensive and reactive, and you want to defend yourself, and you want to right away give the explanation. No, that's not what happened, or this is not what I did, or that wasn't my intention. The person should really not say anything. Like that's just some general, and I just want to make it clear that I'm not giving any legal advice here on the show, but just as a general tip, it's really very important not to say anything, only because when you are being arrested or stopped, you're really at the very initial stage of a criminal proceeding. You don't know yet all the information that the police have against you or may potentially have against you. Anything that you say to a person in authority can be used against you in the criminal proceeding. So if you end up being charged, or if you are already charged, you're giving them evidence against yourself that they can use then at trial and say, well, but you said that, like back then when you were arrested. So the most important thing, and it's very simple, just don't say anything. Fight that urge to want to explain what happened. And I know it's very difficult sometimes when you're really very innocent and, like, you haven't done anything wrong. It's a misunderstanding. It's not with that police officer at the moment that you're being arrested. That's not the right place to explain or to give your side of the story. I mean, you should just wait until you have a trial, or if there is any kind of plea negotiation where there is an option or opportunity to clearly explain what happened, you can do that, but it's not at the time of the arrest. So arrest time, it's very important not to say anything and to call a lawyer. The lawyer will say that, but there could also, depending on the case, and again, criminal law, I think, like other areas of law, it's very case specific. I mean, there are some things that will vary from one case to another, but calling a lawyer is also very important because the lawyer will remind you of these points of not saying anything. The lawyer will explain to you what is about to happen. That the police, for example, if the arrest is not at the police station, well, the next step is they will naturally, most of the times, take that person to the police station, have a video interview, record that interview with them. Everything said in that interview can also be used against them. So it's very important not to say anything also in that interview. Um, so I would say the most basic rules is not say anything, call a lawyer for legal advice the moment you're being arrested.
Moment you be arrested. Okay. Now, like, so my generally, when you reach out to a lawyer, right? In a typical criminal cases, how does the process works? Like, uh, how do you find generally lawyers charge retainer based lawyers charge? Like, walk us through, like, general industry, so people who are watching it too, they get an idea that. Like how is the process works, right? Once you found that lawyer you're talking to, right? In terms of legal fees, and also in terms of, like, generally the timelines and processes, right? How does that work?
So again, so the fees, they will vary from one lawyer to another. So I can't really give a price. It will depend. Different lawyers will charge differently depending on their expertise, their seniority. Um, I mean, the fees should basically just be reasonable, but I mean reasonable also to the amount of work. There's a lot of work that goes into a criminal matter. People don't realize how much work we have to put into every step of the process. But what is also very helpful in criminal law is that we have what we call legal aid. Not all areas of law have that advantage of having legal aid. Legal aid, basically, it's legal aid in different provinces have a legal aid system. In Ontario, it's Legal Aid Ontario. And legal aid uh, helps the people who really cannot afford to pay a lawyer privately. They will pay that lawyer on behalf of the individual. Now you have to meet the legal aid um, uh, criteria or eligibility criteria. They have a financial and legal eligibility criteria. If you meet both of them, then you will be eligible for legal aid. A lot of people, however, don't meet that criteria. It's very low. I mean, like, you really have to have almost no income to qualify for legal aid. So I would say that for criminal lawyers in general, there are two ways that they get retained. It's either through legal aid, if they accept those retainers. Some lawyers don't accept legal aid retainers, they only take private retainers. And there could be, when it's a private retainer, the fees vary from lawyer to lawyer. Some lawyers will charge on an hourly basis, but what is more common in criminal law, it's a block fee. You will have, like, for example, depending on whether the case is going to be resolved, there's a price. If it's going to trial, there's a different price. Or if there are different stages in the process, like, for example, there will be a price, let's say, to review disclosure up until the determination of the trial date. There will be a price, and there will be a price for how many days of trial and for appearing in trial. So, I mean, I can't really say that there is one way of charging. It really depends on the lawyer. But in general, that's what you will commonly see in criminal law.
In criminal law. Okay. 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 That makes sense. Now, like, my in terms of, like, like, in terms of, let's say, yeah, I'll shift a gear and I'll put you in a difficult spot
Yeah.
here, right? Okay. Um, one of the things at Logic we often talk about access to justice, right?
Mhm.
We often hear there was a recent report. I'll give you an example in Edmonton, where our head office is, that majority of the transit tickets were given to a kind of like visible minority, I would say, right? And that was purely true. And we know that these issues come up, which are, of course, related with, has an overlap in criminal law. So, how do you see as a lawyer in terms of access to justice and a legal and police system, right? And how those issues can be can be overcome. So the people in any shape or form, vulnerable people, they have a better shot at but either being put down or let down by the system, or there is a tools and resources that can help those people.
It is. I will say it is a difficult question to answer. I have like mixed uh, feelings about it. There are some opportunities in the system. There are ways to help, but there are, of course, ways to make things better. I think there is a lot that we can still do to improve access to justice. I mean, and access to justice can come in various forms, right? Like it could be in the language. You want to make sure that I mean, sometimes we tend to forget that in Canada we have two official language. It's French and English, not just English. Some provinces or some parts of the country, French is not readily available, which is a shame. It should be, just as present as English. We shouldn't have a shortage of bilingual judges. So, I mean, there are different issues of access to justice. Cost could be an issue as well, like retaining lawyers. That's another problem. Um, it puts, I mean, I have to be honest, criminal defense lawyers right now are in a very difficult position. Because we're not getting paid enough. There has been some cuts in legal aid budget. There are some negotiations going on right now to kind of really help a little bit and improve in that area, but it is a little bit difficult. We're not, as criminal defense lawyers, we don't get paid a lot by legal aid. Not a lot of people right now in this time of inflation, not a lot of people have money to retain lawyers privately at the rate that a lawyer would want to charge. So which puts the lawyers in a situation where they can't really take on some files if the price is going to be too low, because again, there's a lot of work that goes into criminal defense, and that's why a lot of clients decide that they just want to represent themselves. So we're having more and more self-represented clients, which could not be a very good idea because the criminal law is complex and your liberty as it is at stake. It's not that at the end of the day you're going to be losing money. It's there could be jail potentially. So
Yes.
it is always better to be represented by a lawyer, but you have to be able to afford the lawyer, or you need to have a system that allows you to retain the lawyer if you cannot retain that lawyer. So there is this issue of access to justice in the sense that financially, in terms of resources or help available. Um, of course, there's always room to do better, and like I try to help as much as I can. I know there are a lot of lawyers who are involved. I'm certainly not the only one who are trying to like do their best to make sure that there is better access to justice and also better education. I find another issue, especially when it comes to criminal defense lawyers, there tends to be sometimes some misconception about the role of a defense lawyer, that the defense lawyer is viewed as that person who defends criminals, who protects their crimes, and that's not what a defense lawyer does. We're not defending a crime, we're not condoning a crime. We're just trying to make sure that if a person is being accused of a crime, that they're being treated fairly and that the evidence against them is strong enough to actually prove the elements of the offense, and that the crown is really proving their case against them. But we're not defending the crime, we're not defending criminals. And many of the people accused of crimes are actually innocent. Believe it or not, people have a hard time believing that, because some people think, well, because someone is charged with a crime, they must have done something. And no, sometimes people do get charged, even if they are completely innocent. So
Makes
I
sense.
find there needs to be more education on the role of a criminal
Yes.
defense lawyer.
Like absolutely, I think the public perception, the narrative is important because how they see a criminal lawyer is very important. I think a lot of people don't understand that what goes into it, and also as you said that people who are wrongfully convicted, right? Wrongfully charged. Someone has to represent them and stand up for them.
Yeah.
Now, and so Maya, like if people want to get in touch with you, they just want to reach out, right? If they have any questions, uh, where they can find you easily.
Well, I do have a website. It's Shukairy Law. They can
Mhm.
also find me on social media. I do have a Twitter account at Shukairy Law, LinkedIn, Instagram. It's not really related to work. I post sometimes some events that I'm involved in. I will publicize, but it's really more on Twitter and LinkedIn that they can find me. There's also my website. There is my email on my website that they can also reach out to me over there.
That's awesome, right? So everyone who's listening, wherever you guys are listening, or you are like doing a video, audio listen, or you're just watching it as a short form content, right? We will make sure that Maya's contact details are in the show notes, right? So you can reach out, and we will also monitor the comments. So if you have any questions, please go in the comments and ask us, and we'll make sure that Maya get those questions as well, right? Maya, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your valuable time today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure, and it's very nice to meet you, Ali. I was really looking forward to this.
You're welcome, right? So Legal Connect, guys, Maya deconstructed, right? Like throughout our lives, as simple as getting a ticket to like I'm sure you have a friends and family, uh, they have one way or the other have dealt with the criminal side of the law, right? Sometimes wrongfully convicted, sometimes they've been charged rightfully, right? But the bottom line is that you getting the right advice is very important, right? Because as it can have an impact. uh, I know people personally, the impact can be if someone goes to jail, that affects the whole family, not just a
Of
family, whole
course.
generation, right?
Yeah,
A very different kind of trauma, right? So I think this specifically in this kind of an area where your life has where it has a lot of implications on your life, like on like from the decisions of this process, I always say that hire the right legal advisor. And I think, Maya put it beautifully that it's not about the money pricing based on individual experience, scenario, situation. So it's a combination, right? And but you need to go reach out, right? You need to have those conversations, right? And one of the things that I always find is that it's so surprising that people are so afraid and reaching out to Lord. And I said, no, 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 they are humans. They're just like you. Talk to them, talk your heart out, and they'll help you out, right? Or at least
yeah.
they're very willing to help. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we want to do at the Legal Connect podcast, that to demystify this myth of the lawyers are scary to deal with and law is very scary to deal with. No, there are humans on the other side, and they're very helpful. Just like Maya, right? Who gave us an amazing, amazing advice. Thank you to everyone, right? Okay, we'll catch you in the next episode. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, Ali.